Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Kids Mental Health webinar brought to you by Dakota Medical Foundation and the Maddow Foundation. Today is a very relevant and important topic. We're talking about back to school for kids. And this can be stressful for both kids and parents alike. I mean, stress and anxiety begins to mount as these fun summer days start to fade away and new class schedules, homework, practices, and games start to fill the calendar. So we're going to have a very special guest that's going to join us in just a moment, and it's Cassie Larson. She's a licensed professional counselor at Fargo Public Schools, and she's the host of the Here for the Kids podcast. Now, you can listen to that and also check that out on YouTube. We'll post information about how to get that, and you can learn more from Cassie in addition to this great conversation that we're going to talk about school and mental health and home life and building relationships. But we're really going to center in on the things that we can do to get our kids ready for school. So with that, I'd like to welcome to the show, Cassie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, as a licensed professional counselor, let's just start with the beginning. From your professional opinion, what are some of the things we need to do as we start to get ready? School is starting right around the corner. How should we start preparing?
Okay, well, that is like a really big question, right? But I think you and I were talking a couple minutes ago just about transitions, and transitions and change are hard for everyone, kids and adults alike. And so the more that we can just prepare and have positive conversations with our kids is a great way to get going in the right direction. One of my favorite things to do with my kids when we're getting ready for school is to get them involved in the picking out of their back to school items. So I know that we're, about a week out. So maybe most people have their school supplies already. But if they don't, like letting kids go in and pick out their items, let them have some ownership there. When we're thinking about anxiety or change or things that are new, the more that you can control, like the better you feel usually. So by letting the kids control over maybe what color notebook they get or which color highlighter they get to have, gives them some ownership of their belongings as well. And if that's something that's difficult for your family, there are resources available for school supplies in our community. The United Way does a great backpack drive every year, and that was last week, unfortunately. But I'm sitting here in my office at school, and what United Way does is they drop off a ton of extra bags with school counselors. So if you're heading back to school and you don't have those items, make sure you're letting your school know, because we have lots of backpacks and school supplies available for kids.
So, and Cassie, one thing that I think would be good, just because you brought that up too, is could you also tell us, about the role of a school counselor, and as we're starting to get ready, what should we know about the school counselor, and, how we can access, because this is a really great point. I mean, if you're having trouble accessing school supplies, that a counselor may not come to our mind right away of somebody to visit with.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking that question. I think school counselors, so it'll vary a little bit depending on the grade level. Like I'm a K through 5 school counselor. So I'm like the keeper of lots of things. I keep masks, I have backpacks, I have tennis shoes, I have resources. I'm an excellent person to talk to about resources in the community, like mental health supports. Sometimes I even connect families with ways to get connected to health and, healthy stuff for health insurance. Like really, school counselors can do a really broad range of things. As our kids get older, I think people think school counselors help with classrooms or with schedules and picking classes and things like that. And that's true. But they also have access to deodorant and hygiene supplies and backpacks and things that kids might need to be successful. And I think that's really what school counselors do, is that we will do almost anything to help kids be successful at school.
Well, it's really helpful. I mean, as we prepare for getting ready for school, is for many parents or caring adults, whether it be grandmas or grandpas or uncles or guardians, that to know that the counselor is there as a point of reference and to help. And it sounds like for both kids and parents alike.
Yes, for absolutely. We're always happy to answer questions for adults, and for kids. And sometimes kids don't know how to, um, tell their parents, "Oh, I'm like really needing deodorant. I think all my other classmates have it," and maybe that's something that's, for example, something hard for the family to access. And so it's okay for kids to ask those questions as well.
Well, that's really amazing work, and we're grateful for what you do for the school system and for our kids in it. Well, when as we start to get ready, you said something very interesting, which is letting them have control to a degree really helps to calm anxiety. So working with them to help to pick out their own things. And could you talk a little bit more about just that process as we start to access, getting the school list ready, and we
Mhm.
want to reduce as much anxiety for them as we can as they deal with this transition.
Yeah, so I think routines are so important, and maybe we think about routines with younger children, and of course they're very important with younger children, but also with our kids as they get older as well. And so letting kids have control over that too. So, like for example, I had a couple of pictures here. Um, this was something that I had made last year. This is just an example, but with my son, like a checklist for school because we had so much stuff we had to bring during this COVID time. So it was like, do you have your mask? Check. Do you have your water bottle? Check. All of a sudden we have, personal devices that we need to bring to school every day. So even though I made this list, it's his responsibility and he has control over making sure he has those items every day and his bag is ready to go. There's also great apps for things like this too, but like having bedtime checklists, making sure that the kids are taking ownership over getting their things ready for the next morning. This is something that's great all the way up to senior year of high school. Is your backpack ready to go? Is your stuff in it that you need? Do you have your tennis shoes for gym class? But just really giving up the responsibility. Of course, we need to coach along the way, but also letting them have pride in that because if they are responsible for these things, I think it also increases some excitement for school and for the day.
Well, and that really gives us something, to work with inside the home is, putting our attention at this point, in addition to, not being maybe stressed out to just let's get in the van and get to Target now and shove a bunch of stuff in the cart. But to work together to sort of think through what's our list, what's the day going to look like every day,
Mhm.
maybe even practicing some things.
Yeah.
But in addition to helping, kids stay grounded, that seems like good advice for us adults as well with kids in our care.
Yes, for sure. And for us to have our routines too, things that we need to do before we go to bed at night and things that we can do in the morning to make it an easier morning. And, and I get it. Like I have 3 kids and I have lists and we do checklists and it's still chaos in the morning, but I think it reduces it a little bit anyways. But yeah, you're talking about like shopping for school supplies and getting those things ready and you said something about practicing and I know you said before the show started that you have an incoming kindergartner. I have an incoming kindergartner too, and practicing things like how do we zip our backpack, how do we put our mask on, how do we zip our coat. I know there's a lot of worry about tennis shoes and I will say that teachers are great and we don't expect 5-year-olds to know how to tie their shoes. However, if you can get Velcro shoes instead, please do, right? But it is really, really helpful if kids can zip their own coat and put their own gloves on, get their backpack ready to go. Some of the fine motor stuff is tricky, even for some of our bigger kids. So just getting used to doing those things. And as rush parents, I think that we have a tendency to want to say, like, no, just let me help you because we have to get out of the house. But by doing that, we're really kind of taking away the opportunities of letting our kids practice getting their stuff ready. And those are things they're going to have to do in the classroom. So maybe, if possible, setting the alarm 5 minutes earlier so that your child can practice putting on their own shoes, can practice getting their coat on, and just those basic getting ready things goes a long way for when they do get to school.
Well, and I think one of the things, I mean, already that you're helping us to see too is that this can be an opportunity for the family to move closer together. We're going to talk about these things, so let's put together the list of things we need to get you. What types of things would you like to pick out? Just from a personal experience, we did this with my daughter's backpack, and she'll love it forever, and she's excited to practice the
Mm-hmm.
zippers and to use it. And I think that's a really good thing to consider, is to let them be a part of this. This will move us closer together. And then school can move, it seems like, to be a little less stressful if we think about these things ahead of time and we've talked about them. So
Yeah.
they're part of the process. We've got
Mm-hmm.
a list. We've talked about the daily routine that we need to do, and then
Yeah.
practice it. That seems like a very helpful set of things for us to do.
Absolutely. And even practicing like going to school. So, there's a lot of anxiety about that first day. Drive over to the school and practice. What will it be like to walk in? I know the last year we've had different doors that we've had to use to separate kids because of COVID. Let's practice, which door are we going to use? What's our drop off going to look like? Keeping the drop off short and sweet is really helpful. The longer we linger, and share our anxiety, the more anxious our kids are going to feel. So, what could be like a special goodbye between the two of you? Maybe it's a quick hug for a kindergartner. Maybe it's like a knuckles for a third grader. What does that want? And then it can be special too, like between the two of you. What is it going to look like? And then also practicing, where's our pickup spot? So if you're going to be driving, where should I pick you up after school? It really reduces a lot of that anxiety of, what if I can't find my parents? Or if they're riding the bus, let's practice. This is where we'll stand to ride the bus. This is where you'll stand to get on the bus when school is out. And of course, hopefully standing at the bus stop with your kids is great. But really practicing any of those routines. And I know that some buildings are doing assessments this week, and some maybe are not. But if you have a child who's feeling very anxious about school, giving the school a call and asking, can we come in and just see the building before the school year starts? Yes, we have COVID restrictions, but if the student has a mask on, I think the schools are very happy to accommodate that. Let's get you in, give you a quick little tour, so you're feeling more comfortable and confident for the first day of school.
Well, and Cassie, I think that's a really relevant point for, a lot of our viewers is, well, what do we do if we've got a very anxious kid about starting? And right now we're staying centered in the younger children. So, if somebody's, really scared, quite a bit nervous, in addition to trying to practice these things, what are some of the things we can put into practice in our home to help to reduce stress?
Absolutely. And I know you said younger students, but I just ran into one of my, I don't have favorites, but one of my students that I love very much at the library. And she was telling me that she had just come back from a little tour at the middle school. So even at middle school and high school, there's anxiety, and they are wanting to go into the building before the first day of school and practice looking for classes. So I think that goes with any age. But things that we can practice at home with our kids if they're feeling anxious are, range from maybe things that we're using in our brain, and then also just things that we're practicing with our body. So like simple breathing techniques, for example. Something that I like to do is pretend that I'm smelling hot chocolate and blowing to cool it off. So that's like a very simple calming breath. I have a third grader. He likes to do 5-finger breathing. So we're breathing in and out as we trace our fingers in and out and in and out and in and out. And just really working on calming our body, because we know that when our brain is anxious, so I do hand model a lot with kids, when our brain is anxious, our frontal lobe, the part of our brain that helps us to make decisions, is not working well. And it's very, very hard to make calm, safe decisions if we're very angry, if we're very anxious, if we're very scared. So by doing simple breathing techniques or using some positive self-talk, we can slowly close our lid and get our frontal cortex working again, and helping us to remember that like this is not so scary, right? And we can think more clearly. We can ask for help from mom and dad. We can ask for help from someone at school when we realize what it is that's happening. But we need to be able to think clearly to do that. So practicing breathing, maybe setting up some like a mantra in the morning or like a positive self-talk statement, like you are brave, you are strong, you can do this, and like practice it and say it again and again together in the car or on the way to school. Or I've even made like flip rings with kids of positive self-talk, or this is one that a student made, said like, you are brave, you are strong, you can do this. I think I just repeated this one, but you are good enough, and you are loved. And so I think with anxiety, we get a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of negative thoughts in our head. And it can be really discouraging because it's hard to get rid of those. But I think as long as you can replace the thought, you don't have to get rid of the thought, just acknowledge that it came in your head. But then replace it with a positive thought. And slowly over time, we can train our brain to be more positive. So if I'm very worried about going to school, maybe I'm worried that I won't have any friends. Well, I can think positively. I can argue with myself and say, but what a great chance to make some new friends. And sometimes kids need help with this, right? Like us adults, we need to model ways to say these positive things. And, I think this is hard for adults because we have these good relationships with our kids and we think we can have these great conversations with them, but we really need to be watchful about what we're saying too, because they do take it all in. And so if I was a very anxious kid and had a hard time going to school, and if I'm expressing that a lot, then I might notice that my child all of a sudden is having some anxiety about going to school, for example. Or this is a hot button topic, so maybe I shouldn't bring it up, but like the masks in school. The more I'm expressing that like I hate masks, we shouldn't be wearing masks, of course our kids are then going to be like, well, geez, I probably shouldn't wear my mask. But if we're framing it in a positive way, school just wants to keep you safe, they wanted to keep other kids safe, then those are the kind of thoughts that our kids are going to have. So we really need to be watchful role models with things that we're saying. I think I just like answered 80 questions in one sentence.
Well, it was wonderful and so helpful. But that, I'm really glad that you did, just to further highlight that, because, a big part for our viewers is what's the role that we play as a caring adult, as a parent. We want to make our kids' life, to create the conditions that they can have the brightest future possible. And one of the things that's overlooked is our condition as parents, and that and I think any or caring adult or mentor or coach, and if anybody has had that moment where a kid says a word that they shouldn't know yet, you do know their ears are always on. And perhaps we're not thinking of it that way. So we're in these special circumstances of a pandemic. But even outside of a pandemic, the things that we say and the way that we say them, is getting picked up. And so I think, you've shared some things for kids, and it just seems to be an ongoing theme that's something we also need to do as parents. So we've got our prefrontal cortex is not working very well, and we need to breathe and calm down. And then positive thoughts, for anybody that thinks that is, woo-woo or out there, it turns out it's incredibly important and impactful what we tell ourselves and how that impacts our behavior.
And there's actual science that says that you can grow new pathways in your brain to think more positively. So yes, like you said, like, come on, this is silly. But the more we practice gratitude, the more we practice thinking positively, your brain will eventually actually just train itself to think that way more often. So it's a great practice and exercise, but it does take a little little time. And you said, us parents, we need to get our prefrontal cortex working again too. And that reminded me that it's okay for us to have feelings. Adults, we have feelings, but then label that too. Wow, mom's feeling kind of anxious about summer ending. And so I think I've had some strong feelings lately, but I'm going to breathe and I'm going to think positively about all the great things that we have coming up. You're going to get to see your friends again. You're going to learn new things. You're going to have a teacher that's awesome to take care of you. We have all these special events coming up to look forward to. So really getting our kids excited about what are some things, even if we're nervous about school, maybe we don't even really like school. Maybe it's a hard thing for us to do. What are some goals, like small goals that we can make, or what are some little things that we can look forward to focus on to get us there? And by making those little steps, it's kind of like there's a lot of growth mindset conversations, right? That set small goals, and then as we accomplish them, celebrate those things, and hopefully turn our hesitancy towards school into a love for school eventually over time.
Well, yeah, and I think this is so incredibly helpful for all of us that are tuning into this and watching the replay, because there's a real opportunity for how we create conditions around our children, however we're influencing them. That really matters. I mean, the things that we say out loud. I mean, one way kind of listening to you that makes me think about it is the things that we say out loud is an opportunity for us to say, these are the types of thoughts that I desire for you to have.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want our children having negative thoughts. Well, then it is part of the opportunity for us to help to state audibly, what a good thought to yourself would sound like,
Mm-hmm.
to help create those conditions.
Yeah, and that there's no shame in having a negative thought. I think that I think a lot of people think that if I have these negative thoughts, there must be something wrong with me. But I think we all have negative thoughts. We all have that thing that pops in our head and we're like, ugh. But we have a filter too, hopefully, and we keep it in our brain, and then we try to frame it into a more positive statement. And I think it's okay to acknowledge to our kids, you know what, we all have thoughts like that, but let's think about something that might be more helpful. What's a more helpful way to look at it? And replace that thought. No, we can't just say we're going to stop them from happening, because I think it's impossible to completely stop all negative thoughts, but we can replace them and think more positively.
I had read this somewhere, and you could maybe speak to it in your work, but that one of the greatest predictors of, growth mindset happening inside of a child is, or how they're going to react to a negative circumstance, is how their parents or their role model, their primary role model in their life, how they react to a challenge. And I think that's an important note for us to consider, is that, we're talking about preparing our kids, for starting school, but perhaps one of the most important things is we should prepare ourselves to make sure that we're modeling and saying and producing the type of behavior we want them to absorb and model.
Yes, absolutely. And I understand that this is a hard thing, because here I am. I'm like, hey, I'm a school counselor, right? I talk to kids, people on podcasts about what we should do. And every once in a while, my kids say something where I'm like, clearly, I didn't do it the correct way the first time, or I'm not perfect either. But then that's our opportunity too, to say, I made a mistake. And by showing our kids that we can practice acknowledging our mistakes, acknowledging our feelings, and then being a role model to show how can we move on from this? What am I going to do to make it right? Or what am I going to do to feel better about this situation? Our kids are always watching us. They are always listening. And we will make mistakes. But then I think it's those next steps, right? Will we learn from that mistake or not? And then how do we move forward?
Well, yeah. And I mean, if you think about what is our expectation, we can't remove challenges, nor should we. as kids start to start school. I mean, there are just things that we cannot remove. I mean, we got to go to a classroom, we got to do these new things, and
Mhm.
these end up being very good things when it's all said and done. But there's a real question, which is, how do we want the kids in our lives to respond to a challenge? And
Right.
then what can we do that's best about it? And you have walked us through some really, really important fundamental things that we can all adopt, starting with the concept of creating a schedule and a checklist.
Mhm.
Is, let's make sure we've got a plan for what every day looks like, and that we've
Mhm.
talked about it, that we give them some agency
Mhm.
over how they're helping to pick out their supplies and they're involved,
Right.
and then to practice and to set these routines, and then
Mhm.
to make sure that when there is a challenging circumstance or there's nervousness, that's not shamed, it's embraced, to say, oh, that's okay to have this thought, but let's talk about what we want to do tomorrow when we start, or next week,
Right.
to enter the school.
And if you have a child that you find is really just consumed by anxiety, um, asking for help too. There does come a point where this is something that is bigger than mom and dad and child at home. It's something that, one, I need to let my child's teacher know, or teachers if we're at middle school or high school, that they're really having a hard time with this. Reaching out to building administrators, reaching out to the school counselor. School counselor might be a good start, because then that person can help facilitate conversations with all the other people as well. But letting the school know that they are really having a lot of anxiety. My child is feeling sick about coming to school. And we can really look at barriers then too, break it down to what is it that is making it hard for this kid to come to school. Sometimes I've had children who are showing so much anxiety at home, but then when they get to school, they're having a great time. So then it's just really looking at, what's the barrier there. Well, I think it's that it's just really hard to leave home, right? But then we have other kids who seem fine at home, and then they come to school and are very, very anxious. So then we look at our school day. What is it about the school day that is causing a lot of stress for this child? Is it peer relationships? Is it schoolwork? Is it lack of sleep? Like, what is that? And but by having those conversations with the school, we can really clear those things up. And when we don't know that kids are feeling this way, it's really hard for us to help and to adjust things here, make accommodations as needed. So never feel like it's too little or too much. Please always feel like you can reach out to the school so we can have these conversations and help.
Well, and I mean, I think that's one thing that can, really help, particularly at this point in time. We've got a little bit of runway here to be able to formulate some good relationships with the school counselor, to know what the building looks like. We've got plenty of time to sort of help to get some familiarity of
Mhm.
relationships, and what this looks like. And I did notice that on Seesaw, at least those that are watching in the Fargo area, or whatever a lot of times the teachers will even put pictures of the classroom, and they'll do,
Mhm.
so it can lead to a really good discussion in the home about, this is what it looks like and what you can expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Or I know our building had sent out some videos like last spring, like do little tours of the school. And sometimes those are posted on school websites. You can look at this website together, but just preparing your child as much as you can. And I think I like said something about sleep, and I feel like we skipped over this before. So I just want to go back to it again. But like, sleep is so important. Our kids are going to feel so much better when they have a good night's sleep. And we talked about routines, but what should that bedtime routine look like? And I think spending some one-on-one time with our kids as much as possible. Some of us have lots of children, I get it, but research says that spending even 5 to 10 minutes a day with each child alone, like one-on-one, builds such a solid foundation. And that sounds like such a little amount of time, but the days do get really busy. But what can we do to spend just a couple of minutes together before bed? Um, Give an opportunity to talk about our day, talk about those worries that we're having, and then getting to bed on time. Um, I was just reading the American Academy for Pediatrics recommendations again a couple days ago, and our elementary kids, they need 10 to 12 hours of sleep still. And then this surprised me a little bit, but even our high schoolers are still needing like 9 to 11 hours of sleep to grow and rejuvenate all those brain cells. And I know that our kids are not getting that much sleep. And so making sure that they get to bed on time. And with a week out from school right now, maybe you're thinking, oh my gosh, my kid's been up till like 1 a.m. all summer. So what can we do to try to baby step it back maybe? So maybe try half an hour earlier every night for the next week until we get down to a reasonable time to go to sleep. And I hear from our older kids a lot that they can't sleep because they're too busy on their cell phone. So I think another great thing that parents can do is to give devices a bedtime. Everybody's device in the house, mom's too, goes to bed at whatever time. Maybe it's 9 o'clock, depending on the age of your kids. I've even heard people have like lock boxes, like all the devices go in, we lock it for the night, and we are not going on those things because they are interrupting our kids' sleep so much. And that's probably like a whole nother podcast on the other anxiety that devices bring up. But if we're getting to bed on time, if we're getting off of our tablets and our phones and spending a little time with mom or with dad or with guardian or whoever's taking care of us, but some special time, maybe reading together, are great ways to end our day and get ready for the next day.
Well, and that's so helpful. I mean, in addition to making sure that sleep is taking place because it's essential, but starting now to transition, so it's not just the shock of just summer, 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 wake up, go to school. That could certainly, add to the anxiety if anybody's prone to be feeling that. But this also this idea of at least 5 to 10 minutes. You're right. That's not a lot of time to ask for, no matter how busy you are, and to connect in the home. But I think you're laying a good case, though, that it's about connecting. And so having good quality time, the device is in bed, you're heading to bed, or wherever you find this time, but to make sure that we create quality time, which I
Mhm.
think for a lot of parents it can seem harder these days, but that it's 5 to 10 minutes of personally connecting. And usually I know that if there's something kind of under the surface, that that's the time it's going to come out.
Mhm. Right. Right. I think that 8:30, like you're supposed to be sleeping, but here you are talking to me about everything that you want to say, and I want you to go to sleep, but I also really want to hear what you have to say. So it's trying to find that balance. But they do. They I don't know. There's something magical about a pillow and a blanket, and they just want to tell you like all about their life at bedtime. But allowing for that opportunity.
Well,
And
oh, sorry, go
oh,
ahead,
no,
Cassie.
you're fine.
Well, I think kind of listening to the pathway. It kind of comes to my mind in this order of setting up a structure, and the
Mhm.
structure is starting with putting together checklists, setting the new routine and what the routine will be, and doing
Mhm.
that together. It's a good opportunity to sort of work together and allow them
Mhm.
to maybe help color the checklist, help to pick out their school supplies. They're
Mhm.
involved in the process. Then going from structure to support, and how we can support is making sure we're ready to help have positive thoughts when there are negative ones, to do breathing exercises, and I even this 5 minutes of quality to sort of be in there. And then third, this sleep, which is, wow, what an incredible tip, because I think a lot of us may not be thinking that that's something we should be keying in on, is making sure that
Mhm.
they're getting 10 to 11 hours, is it for younger kids, that of
Mhm.
sleep each night before school. And so if you're on the summer clock and staying up until it's dark, we've got a transition we need to start working on.
Mhm. And transitions are hard, so they take practice, ease into it. But yes, and I think maybe I'm probably too scheduled and too routined, but even on weekends, research says that we should try to stick to a similar routine because it creates better success for Sunday night and Monday mornings. And I know that I'm guilty of staying up much later on the week. I actually get less sleep, I think, on the weekends than I do on weeknights, but trying to stay in those routines. And as far as making the bedtime schedule, making the morning schedule, like you said, letting kids have control and power over things that are fine, right? Like, so what order do you want to do this in? Do you want to get dressed first? Do you want to brush your teeth first? What order do you want to have? And then also making like family calendar together. So I know one of my stressors for when the school year starts is that we just get so busy. So we've like spent this lovely summer of relaxation, and I mean, we have activities in the summer too, but nowhere near the same. And just getting ready for that fall mentality of now we have school, and then we have sports, and then we have swimming lessons and activities, and somehow in there we're supposed to eat food and go grocery shopping. So making a family calendar, posting it somewhere where everyone can see. Maybe it's like a chalkboard, maybe it's on the fridge, but what does the week look like? Because when we plan things out, that reduces anxiety too. So kids can see, oh, on Thursday night, I have a soccer game. And then it's not Thursday. And you're like, oh, by the way, you have whatever today. And it's like, what? I wanted to play Legos after school. Or I wanted to see my friends. So planning it out and letting everyone know ahead of time what the schedule will look like allows for, again, reducing anxiety.
That is so incredibly helpful. And I think that's, something that we can take into practice with everything, not just school, is helping to plan it out, helping to talk about it, letting them have control over decisions where that's appropriate to do so.
Mm-hmm.
This is some, it's a different approach to parenting than maybe some of us grew up with. But how wonderful of an opportunity we have to proactively demonstrate, teach, and coach our kids to be able to do these activities, to plan well, to have positive thoughts, to be able to deal with negative emotions that come up, or anxiety, which is perfectly normal, and helping to
Mm-hmm.
deal from a young age. And the better we get at that, then just imagine what our kids are going to be capable as they age.
Mm-hmm. And also allowing for some unscheduled play. I feel like I'm sitting here like routine schedule, but we also know that there's a lot of power in downtime. So making sure we are allowing our children and our teenagers some downtime to disconnect and to relax and to just really rejuvenate themselves. Because I know us parents, we need our downtime. Our kids need their downtime too.
One of the things as we start to move towards the close of this interview is, what are some things as a counselor you really wish most parents knew? Just something helpful for all of us to think about as this is starting up. Can be simple or more complex, but
Yeah.
just is something that would make life a lot easier for all of our kids starting school and going to school.
Yeah. I think that parents would be surprised at how badly their kids want time with them. Even as they get older, like our oldest kids here at elementary school, I hear, that we're just so busy and we don't have time to like just be together as a family. So making sure we make time together as a family. And I would say that teachers want more than anything for parents and kids to just read together. So if you wanted to combine those two, how can we make time together, and how can we work on some of those basic skills too? But even teenagers too, they want time with their parents. And I think we think like as our kids are getting older that maybe they find us annoying, or maybe they don't want to be around us, but they really do. And so relationships are so key. And then, I mean, we've already talked about this, but I think the importance of sleep and how powerful, I'm going to use the word powerful, screen time is, because there's a lot of really good things that can come out of screens. Like, I understand that. But I'd say that a large amount of issues that I see at school have to do with kids and their devices. So things that are happening on social media, things that are happening on over group chats, lots of feelings that are happening, lots of sometimes age inappropriate things that are happening, and that it's okay as parents for us to have rules, and it's okay for us as parents to check devices and to be looking at those things. They're not private for that child. All the way up to 18, we have a right to look at what they're doing and have conversations about that. And so those are like very broad spectrum, but maybe you can lump it all together, right? Like, how can we spend time together as a family, and how can I make sure that you and I, that we're on the same page and we're connected, and I know what you're up to on some of these devices too. I don't know. That was like a really big range of answers.
Well, it's so helpful. I mean, because it's like, I think, for myself and maybe for a lot of viewers, I didn't think that the number one thing that you would share with us is that the desire for our kids to spend time with us. And, and the device thing is something that's on everybody's mind. And so really
Mhm.
appreciate you sharing that, and that we should be monitoring that. Also, as a licensed counselor, what are some signs we should maybe be looking for, or that would be helpful for you? Because if I know there's times when you're definitely going to contact a parent, or or maybe times where you're monitoring the situation, but on the other end at home, what are some
Mhm.
things that we should be looking for, and when should we contact a counselor?
Yeah.
When is a good time to look for these things and then to reach out?
Yeah, I think any dramatic change in behavior or loss of interest in activities, so things that my child used to really love to do and all of a sudden they don't. I mean, our kids, they change their interests, right? But if interests have changed to that we don't really like anything anymore, that's a red flag. Really disconnecting from all relationships. Again, friendships change, but if we're not wanting to be with anyone, that's a red flag. Lots of negative self-talk, if they're not saying anything positive about themselves, and this goes on for a period of time. It's normal for any human being to feel sad from time to time. It's normal for us to feel worried from time to time. But when it becomes intrusive, like in every day, I'm having trouble doing other activities or doing my schoolwork because I'm too sad or I'm too worried, then those are concerns that we want to express to either our pediatrician or to a school counselor. And so I think just any really big change in behavior, withdrawal, that's not a word, withdrawal, or like a big escalation in behavior too, right? Like, so maybe we're just like, I don't know, off the charts all of a sudden, or we're really angry often, and it seems like a change. I think sometimes, for myself, anyways, here at school, I think that sometimes parents think it needs to be this really big thing in order to ask for help. And I think it can be any little thing. You have a small concern. I'm always happy to meet with your child and just see, like, what's this about. And I think that most counselors would say the same thing. We're always much happier to get it on the preventive end, right? Like at the front end, than when things have maybe, it's going to be harder when it's gone longer.
Well, and that's helpful, because even if you've got a intuition, a little thought about something, that it's good for all of us to know, parents or grandparents and guardians, to know that we should reach out and at least discuss with the counselor so we can monitor the situation. Because you're right. I mean, imagine the problems that can be prevented by doing that early on,
Mhm.
rather than much later.
Yes.
Well, Cassie, you ran us through so many positive things about getting ready and setting up sort of a structure to putting together the checklist and getting them ready, how to do support to make sure that we're really helping them to give positive thoughts. Giving them quality time is really important as we transition into this, and then to watch for any change of behavior that seems extreme on one end or the other, to monitor devices and put them to bed as well, because you've also talked to us about the importance of sleep And you've also given us a number of tools to be able to navigate this challenge that we have as we start to prepare for the start of school, and knowing that it is just as important that we prepare as caring adults as we do for children, and that we want to model the behavior we'd like to see in them, and that we work together for a positive experience. Is there anything else, Cassie, that you'd like to share with our audience?
I hope everyone has a great school year. I think that I'm hoping this was helpful. Again, we are always here as school professionals, happy to help your family and support your family in anything that you need.
Well, Cassie, it was absolutely a delight to be able to visit with you, and this was very, very helpful. So, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, again, thank you, Cassie. If you have any further questions for Cassie, you can find her on the Fargo Public Schools website. Also, be sure to look for her podcast and YouTube channel where you're going to learn all sorts of information. This was just the start of what Cassie has to share in terms of practical, helpful information to guide you and your children for a successful school year and life. Also, be sure to join us next month for the next Kids Mental Health webinar. Information will be posted on social, so be sure you're following us at Dakota Medical Foundation and Maddow Foundation on Facebook and all the social channels. Also, if you have not done so yet, we have a special request for you, which is we really would like you to please consider taking part of DMF's initiative to end child sexual abuse by visiting learnthesigns.org. That's learnthesigns.org. Information will be posted with this video, but sign the pledge, watch the video, and please share this pledge with 3 other adults. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on next month's webinar.